Okay, so we're going to talk about a new function operation, which is called function composition. So before we start talking about it, we're going to fill in these two tables here. So the first one we're going to do is for f of x. So all that means is that everywhere I see this x in the equation, I'm going to replace that with the x value in the chart. So I'm going to pull up my calculator. Well, that's not my calculator. I'm going to pull up my calculator. So I'm going to plug in 0 first. I'm going to do 2 times 0 minus 5, right? I'm going to get negative 5, so we'll write that in here, right? And then I'm just going to plug in 1. So I'm going to get 2 times 1 minus 5. Okay, we get negative 3, right? And then same thing, right? We're just going to keep going down the line and changing the value in the parentheses. Everything else stays the same. Okay, right, and then we're going to do the same thing, but now we're going to use x squared plus 3. So we want to be careful when we type in our calculators that wherever you type in the x gets parentheses around it, so the square needs to go on the outside of the parentheses. So when I plug in negative 5, I need to square negative 5, so I'm going to put it in parentheses, square it on the outside, and then add 3. I'm going to get 28. Right, and then I'm just going to keep going down the line and doing my next value. So I'm going to plug in negative 3. I'm going to square it, and then I'm going to add 3. So I get 12. Now I'm going to square negative 1. Add 3. We get 4. Right now we got positive numbers to square. So I get 4 again. 3 squared plus 3, it gives me 12 again. Okay. So function operations that you've probably worked with before this are, you could have addition, right, which might be notated as f of x plus g of x, right? We had subtraction, right? So f of x minus g of x. I don't know why I keep saying paste. We have multiplied before, so multiplication, right? So f of x, right, times g of x. And if you were in my classes or followed along in these videos, right, we did that one of two ways. We did the FOIL method, right, where you draw all the arrows and distribute, or we used the box method to help us organize our thoughts. And the last thing that we've talked about before is division of polynomials, and we did synthetic division. So it might have looked like f of x divided by g of x, and this was our synthetic division. So this new operation we call function composition, and it's really two problems in one. So we're going to call it two problems in one. And of course we have some notation for this. So there's two different ways that we could see this. So this is super important. So there's two ways that function composition can be notated. Sometimes it looks like this. So we're going to have like one function on the outside, so like f, and then on the inside we do g of x. Or it could look something like this. In parentheses, we have our two function names, so f and g. And then we put this little symbol in between them, and it's just a little open circle. So it looks like the word fog. That little open circle stands for the words composed with, and then we say that we're plugging in x. So this little circle here is composed with. So we read that as f composed with g of x. And so how we do this, right, what it boils down to is you solve the inside problem. And plug your answer into the outside problem. So you always want to work inside out. So you always start with the inside. So we're going to do a couple, and we're going to actually use those two function tables for f and g up above that we did for like our quote-unquote our warm-up to help us solve the next ones. Okay, so we're going to use the two function tables we filled in for warm-up, and we're going to evaluate the following function compositions. So the first thing you always do is you want to find the inside function. So the first thing I'm going to do is find f of 1. So all that tells me is I want to go up to my f table, and wherever x is 1, right, this replaces the x value, I want to find the y value there. So if I go up to my table, right, f of 1 gives me -3. So I'm going to put that -3 value down here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and put it into my outside problem. So my outside problem is g, and now I'm going to plug in the -3. So again, this becomes my x, and now I want to go and find the y coordinate from my g table. So I'm going to go up to g and find x of -3, so right here, and that matches to 12. So my final answer here is 12. Right, so in part B, you can see that we have that slightly different notation, right? We see that little open circle. So the inside function is whichever one is closest to the number or the x value. So the first thing we're going to do is find f of 3. So that tells me that's my x coordinate. So I'm going to go up to my table, right? F, I'm going to find 3, and that tells me I'm going over to 1. So my first answer is 1. And then I'm going to plug that into my further away value. So you're always working from closest to furthest away. So then I'm going to go to my g table, and I'm going to plug in 1 for the x value and find the y value. So I'm going to go up to my tables, I find 1, and that tells me I'm going over here to 4 for my final answer. So that answer is 4, so my overall answer is 4. If you feel like you've been following along and you have your tables written down, I'm going to encourage you to pause the video and solve C and D on your own, and then unpause and check your answers. Okay, so either you're unpausing the video to check your answers, or you were confused and you're waiting for me to do them, which is totally fine. So I always do inside first. So I'm going to find g of -1. So this time I'm going to start in the g table. So I'm going to go g, which is over here, right? I'm going to find -1, and that takes me over to 4. So my first answer here is 4. And then I'm going to plug it into my outside function. So f is on the outside, and I'm going to plug in an x value of 4. So now I go to my f table. So over here, I'm going to find 4 for the x's, and that tells me that my final value is going to be 3. So this answer is 3. The overall answer is 3. So if you're having trouble figuring out which ones are the answers, I'll box them so they stand out a little bit more. And then, okay, let's look at D. D's a little harder because, not maybe harder, but different, right? Because it's 2 f's. So the first thing we're going to do is find f of 3. So we're going to go to the f table, find 3 in the x column, and it takes us over to the 1. So my first answer is 1. So then I go, and I'm going to go back to f, but now I'm going to take that number and I'm going to put that in the parentheses. So now I want to find f of 1. I'm still on the same table, so now I'm going to find 1, and now my final answer is -3.